Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. To the scoreboard, I am Jared Kimber. What on earth did they just make us watch? How has this happened? How has this been allowed to continue? How is this a thing? My God, honestly, up until the point they hit the winning run, I still thought Punjab were going to stuff that up. Absolutely incredible. And Johnny Bairstow, there are times when you think there is nothing he can't do, and far more times when you think there is nothing he can do. Earlier in the tournament, it looked like he was batting with a salami that had been half eaten and left under his sofa for like 7 months. And then you see today, and he's brought with him a bat 3 times as wide as anyone would ever need, and it's springy, and every single ball just seems to ricochet off it to whichever boundary he's roughly aiming at. And it's unfair to just talk about him in that kind of chase, because Prabh Simran looked like he was going to get all of those runs on his own and still have an early night to eat ice cream or whatever the hell he wanted to do at that point. And what about Shashank, who only seemed to play and miss or hit sixes? What the hell was that one over cover? That was a hate crime. And honestly, at the halfway point, I thought the best chance of Punjab winning that, I thought the best chance of him having a moral victory was getting bowled out for 205. A punchy 205. That is just one of the craziest chases I've ever seen. And they did it skippy in the end. In fact, they even seemed to panic at the end and they started getting singles. They could have just kept hitting singles. Sixes, whatever the other things were. I don't know why we're talking about singles today at all after that game. And they did that all easily, including an idiotic run out with the guy who had started it all. It was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Mitchell Starc could not have picked a better game to miss. And Shikhar Dhawan, he might have just played the greatest IPL innings of his life. I mean, at one stage, Varun Chakravarti was bowling leg spin bounces, right? I mean, we should be talking about Sunil Narayan's all-round game, which was probably one of the best we will see. Or what about that period when KKR only wanted the Ayers to come in and bat over and over again? And if you were sitting there and you tell me that honestly you remember Phil Salt's innings, you don't. You filthy, filthy liar. Because at one stage your brain was replaced by a bowl of ice cream for even having watched this nonsense. Poke my eyes out, dip me in kerosene. This was all wonderfully stupid. I suppose we have to do the actual show. If you want to ask a super chat, I suppose this is either the best game to ask a super chat for or the worst game to ask a super chat for. But let's get this going. Put them in. Any comments? I'm sure you'll all have comments. There'll be so many comments. Let's get to the actual show. The highest successful T20 chase. This one. 262. And the thing is that the IPL has changed things so rapidly. And the impact sub has become such a big deal, especially for batting. And we were already, even without the impact sub, around the world, we were seeing that there'd been a bit of a boost for runs. That this didn't feel like a hard chase. Like, how early on were you watching this and you thought to yourself, okay, well, they've got through 2 overs of Narayan already, and Chakravarti seems to have completely lost the plot. Like, their best chance of winning that game was one of those overs where Andre Russell takes 3 wickets. What was the second best chance? That everyone in Punjab ran themselves out? I mean, it really was. It's the ease at which they got there in the end. And I think I said this on one of the videos recently that we're all pining for, the first 300 score. Although at the moment, a lot of people are not pining for high scores. They're all like, we've seen enough of the high scores. But you know what I mean? The idea that we can get to that theoretical limit of 300. But it also might not be that much longer after that we see a team chase 300. In fact, it may be in the same game, the way that teams are playing at the moment. Just absolutely bananas. This is the average first inning score by season in the IPL. It's always worth noting that 2008 was a really, really high scoring season, kind of out of nowhere. But you could see that it's been going up, but it's not exactly like flying up, right? And then we see the impact sub, and we see this year. Now, it's worth pointing out that Kookaburra changed the balls, what's that, 2020? So I reckon that would probably be this season, maybe a little bit of this season as well. So if that hadn't have happened, I think these years would have been slightly higher. So what we might have actually seen is a more natural progression. But there is no doubt at the moment that, this is an outlier. Remember, the season has not finished. And I only say that because sometimes these things do slow down and we get really, really excited, and then the cricket gets normal again. This may not happen, but, it's a possibility. But at the moment, we are 32 runs per innings higher than the first IPL and 42 runs higher than the lowest scoring IPL. So, yeah. This is the Kings' runs per over by face. Anyone who has been to this channel many times will know that I'm still disappointed there was such a letdown in this period. But let's just go through it a little bit here. So they scored at 15.5 runs per over. And what odds could you have got on Punjab having a better power play than Kolkata? Like, I didn't even have a look, but the chances are it wasn't going to happen. I mean, had they scored over 200? I think they might have scored 200 in one game this year. Am I right? And they've been on a different kind of wicket, of course. But even then, you wouldn't have thought that. And Prem Simran, take a lot of credit here. But, and I hate to nitpick on a day when they've done, the biggest chase in T20 cricket history. Who's stealing a single off the last ball of a power play? Why would you do that? And I do think that this being low, if it wasn't for that run out, I honestly believe that they probably score around 13 to 14 runs and over in this period as well. And they wouldn't even have had to get to the end. Because that Shashank over where he gets 3 dot balls and 3 sixes kind of breaks the game, right? Was it that over? I think that's the over I'm thinking of. Or was it the next over? Whichever one it was, where there was so many overs for sixes. But they still had to get to a point where it was very late before it was guaranteed. So I think the bookies had them as, a comfortable favorite, but they weren't a red hot favorite at that point, which meant it still could have gone the other way. Whereas had they not got that run out and they get the 13 to 14 runs per over here, I think they probably just absolutely trained this game home. And this is going to sound stupid, but they might have won it in the 17th or 18th over, if that was the case. Which does sound absolutely bizarre. I'm trying to think now, how far were they? They're not that far off pace from a 300 game, are they? I've already done this one, haven't I? Average first inning score by season. Yeah. Did I go backwards by accident? Oh, that's my fault. Sorry, everyone. Most runs in the power play in the IPL. So this is the Delhi game for Sunrisers, and this is earlier this season, and this is Punjab. So there's 2 from CSK in 2014 and 2015, and so there's, this isn't this season, this is 2017. So we've had 2 from this season in the top 5. I'm actually shocked there isn't more. That is just ridiculous, of course. But this was absolutely massive as well. Prem Simran just looked like he could hit every ball. There was a point at which, it must have been when Uncle came on. Yeah, I think that's right. And he was bowling his left arm finger spin. We will get to this in a moment because this is also worth mentioning. But he bowls it a little bit short and a little bit wide, and it spins away. And Bairstow realizes that everyone's on the leg side, and he just throws his bat at the ball. Like, he almost literally throws his bat at the ball. And it's probably one of the ugliest shots Bairstow has ever played. But such was their commitment to getting as many runs as possible in that power play. There was no wasted moment, right? They were absolutely all in. I thought it's a brilliant way to start that innings, because they had what, about an over and a half of getting themselves set, and from then on in, they were batting like it was the death. This is the strike rate of various players today. What a failure. But we'll get to Russo in a moment. So Prab Simran went at 270. I just thought that was a magnificent innings. I'm still so upset that he was run out because of what he could have done. Bairstow went at 225. This is the anchor innings. Russo, I think, probably, it's not quite a Markram. If you've been watching the IPL this season, I think you'll know what I mean. For two reasons. One, I do think he was trying to hit sixes, and he certainly went for it a little bit. The other was when the wicket fell, unless you sent in an Ashutosh or a Shashank at that point, I think most batters would have naturally just tried to get themselves set a little bit. And I do think Russo was going. I also thought it was interesting that Russo went for Narayan, because I thought once I got past those first 2 overs, I was like, if you get 12 more runs off Narayan here and don't lose a wicket, you've won this. That's the way to go. And then Shashank at the end. Shashank is one of those players who, I'm trying to think, Tim David-like player, where you watch him and you go, he really is going to either hit this for six or not hit it at all. It's incredible skill to have. Who else we got? True balls per 6 this season. So this obviously factors in when you hit your sixes. So if you hit your sixes at the start of the game, you usually get a bit of a boost here because not as many players hit their sixes at the start of the game. Whereas if you hit sixes at the death, they're a little bit more common. So you'll see here that I think true sixes really helps the openers who hit sixes. I mean, Fraser McGurk's not quite an opener, but you can see there again. And then you've also got Ravindra at the top, right? But you could see that Prab Simran is just, phenomenal at that ability, to be able to actually, clear the ropes early on. Some of those shots that he played, he wasn't really anywhere near the line, and his commitment to just playing through them anyway. I think this is going to sound weird, but if you look back at the way that cricket used to be played, and I'm talking 5 years ago, let alone 20 and 30 years ago, a lot of the big difference now is that when players decide to go with an attacking shot, even when they realize they've got it wrong, they often will still commit. And it wasn't that long ago. I remember writing a report for a team about a particular player who I said, when you're going up against him, you have to be prepared for the fact that if he thinks he's not going to be able to hit it for six, he will just try and chip it over the infield. And so if you see him go to hit a six, you don't just, put your head up in the air. The minute you see him go for a six, you want to run out of the circle and put yourself in the best, or, at least get ready to run out of the circle and put yourself in the best position. Players are not doing that as much. And it's not just the IPL, because I do think it is, other competitions as well. But it certainly is the IPL, right at the moment that we're seeing that the most. And that's what I like about his particular batting. All these graphics look so stupid. So this is Sunil Narayan's bowling today. So one of my reasons for thinking that Punjab would be out for 205-ish. I think I backed them at under 218 at the close of play. I did 2 bets. One was backing them at 10-1, and the other one was backing them for under 218. So one of those came up and paid very, very well. But the reason I thought they might get bowled out was I had no real faith in guys like Chamira and Harsha and Anakul, who I think I called something else before. And then you've got, but what I thought was you've got Narayan, Chakravarti, and Russell. And my thinking was that Russell can quite often get wickets when you're attacking him. He's not the best defensive bowler, but he is very good, especially when wickets are needed. Chakravarti, again, milking him, you can kind of score at 10 runs and over if you're a good batter against Chakravarti, unless he's unless he's bowling beautifully. But when you've got to attack him, things become very, very different. And Narayan doesn't generally take wickets, but I figured today he would actually take wickets because I thought they would attack very, very hard. In fact, that was my other bet was on Narayan most wickets for KKR, which he was the only one to take a wicket. So, but that was my big thinking behind the way that these things were going to go. And I thought they batted really well by putting Narayan under pressure early on, but not particularly in a way that sometimes I've seen teams just sort of run at Narayan and play very, very stupid shots. And I thought Prab Simran and Bairstow kind of used his length against him and his line against him. So this is going to sound really unsexy, but it's an incredible skill to have. Narayan is brilliant at bowling for singles, right? And so I was hoping when he came on, he'd bowl for wickets, but he didn't. He instantly went, oh, I need to just slow this down. I'm going to slow it down by getting a couple of dot balls. And his best ball is that back of a length ball that hits your thigh pad. And both the players kind of attacked that. And I think there was certainly was it a sweep for 6? And there was another one that was hit off the length as well, that really attacked that. And so from Narayan to come back from that and to still end up with these figures, but all these guys were going to go for runs. And even Narayan went for runs early on before pulling it back. But it was really more that these guys had to get the wickets. And once they didn't get any wickets, that's when it was quite clear that Punjab were going to go very, very deep in this game. And you can see here, so when I talk about him bowling for singles, I mean, he actually bowls for dot balls. But you can see here, he's got 9% less singles than a bowler would for his overs. And considering he's a finger spinner, I know he's a mystery finger spinner, but still a finger spinner, I think that tells you a lot. The other thing is, look how rare it is for teams to milk him. So there are some spinners that you can get those 2s and everything off. What you can do with Narayan is hit him for 4. What you do struggle a little bit more with him is, the ability to hit him for 6s, especially compared to, especially compared to other spinners. But what a fantastic game he had. I'm sure we'll talk about his batting in a moment as well, but just an absolutely brilliant display of cricket by Sunil Narayan, and his team has lost. Is that the second time he's had a great game this year and they've lost? I think it is, isn't it? Must be getting sick of that. All right, let's get on to the other innings. Sure. I mean, that was fun too. The average first inning score by venue. So Kolkata's at 215. You can see Ahmedabad's down at 154 and Delhi's up at 245. So definitely, it's incredible that we have. I just want to see how many. So what's that? 5 venues so far over 200. A couple of these may drop down, but there's also a chance for, Mumbai and Jaipur to go up as well. Maybe not Chennai. That might be stretching it a little bit. Incredible. And that was one thing that was really evident from early on today, of that there was going to be a lot more runs scored. And turns out with both teams. Oh, that's actually one thing I wanted to talk about though, because I meant to mention it before and I could have mentioned it with Narayan as well. What I found amazing about this particular game was that there was spin. Now, I do think it was weird, spongy spin. So, there's when the ball is sort of sitting up in the surface a little bit, the way that it felt like it was today, that allows you to still play the cross-batted shots. There's a couple of times when Bairstow and Salt, I think those were the 2 guys I remember, hitting cut shots where generally if that was coming on a little bit quicker, they'd either have to open the face or they'd be in a situation where, it would rush them a little bit. Whereas I felt like they had a little bit of extra time. And so there was that weird ball that Chakravarti bowled that was like a 80-kilometer-an-hour leg spinning bouncer. And so that's the one thing I found really interesting about this being a high-scoring game, is there was, even the slow balls sometimes got purchased. It just didn't seem to matter. And I don't know if that was just something to do with the way that the balls seemed to be sitting up in the pitch, if that made sense. I was thinking back to Harshall's first over, and that was really, really early on, but it felt like, and there was a lot of bad bowling as well, as far as there was way too many half volleys bowled today. But there was a lot of periods where when you did hit a length, the ball just seemed to sit there. And you have a look at Shashank batting later on. Exactly the same thing again. This is first inning standard deviation by venue. So you can see here that Kolkata's kind of in the middle of where we would expect here. Bengaluru is a really, really interesting one on 45. So you've got Jaipur down here at 6.34. So quite interesting to see where Kolkata kind of... I'm very interested to see where it goes from here. And this is KKR's runs by over by face. Now, I'm just seeing what else we have because we've got Sun on Ryan and Rinku. Okay, we might be able to mention this more with Rinku. Clearly, they started brilliantly again, going at 2 runs a ball in here. Didn't expect the opposition to go more than that, almost 2.5 runs a ball. This is a great period, and I'm trying to think of what, by this stage, like really early on, the win predictors and the betting markets had Punjab as absolutely no chance. This one, even though they scored at 2 runs a ball, did pull it back. I actually like this even mark because it means they were probably going fairly hard all the way through. This is really when they made a bunch of mistakes when it came to who was coming into bat. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But they still would have thought they had enough. I thought they were not short because that would be crazy, but I didn't think they maximized as many runs as they could get. And the one thing that you would maybe argue is if you are scoring so good in this period, you really should be able to get that up to 15 or 16 runs. But I did think there was some really good bowling. I liked the way they bowled to Andre Russell, for instance. And some of it wasn't just that, as we'll get to here. So this is actually what I would say was one of their mistakes, but I don't think it was a mistake in the result. But it was really, Venki should not have come out before Andre Russell, and Shreyas should not have come out before Rinku or Ramandeep. I think in those situations, you just want to keep going with your hitters and then allow for Venki and Shreyas to come in later. It'd be really interesting to hear about that. But so one of these guys got away and ended up with the best strike rate of anyone. What's Venki? 169. And yeah, Rinku was 125. But Venki ate up a lot of balls to get to that 169. And, there was a time at which it looked like Shreyas might do something quite similar as well. He caught up and he didn't. But I just think in that situation, it'd be really interesting to see what happens next time. I think when you have these 3 guys, I want them to come in on the back of what these guys have done. Again, we are talking about Andre Russell not maximizing and Venki getting a little bit stuck and Shreyas burning up some balls but making up for it. So that one doesn't even really count all that much. And so, you look at the game and it's the classic Jacques Callis thing of saying, I think they're 20 short or 10 short or whatever he said in that ODI versus Australia. But I did think they were short. I just didn't think it at all would matter. When I was thinking about this as a note, my main thought was, okay, this is something in the future that they don't want to, and I was even thinking that they got away with it a little bit, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you don't have a hitter at the crease when it's a hitting style pitch. And when you're massively ahead of the run rate. But at no point, and this is really important in case people come back and go, oh, well, Venki lost. At no stage did I think they were going to lose the game because I thought they had made more than enough runs. This is Sun on Orange true values by phase this season. I mean, at least he made it to the death, which is kind of crazy. So he's got 166 runs in the power play at the moment with a true strike rate of +12 and a true average of 21. The thing I find absolutely amazing about this is that you would assume it would be his strike rate that would be the massive one and his true average the other way around. Like if I told you that Sun on Oran was having a great season, he's not playing like an anchor, but he's playing way longer innings, averaging 21 more when, peak Sun on Oran was averaging around 18, right? 18 to 20. To be able to average 21 more than anyone else is in the power play is phenomenal. But interesting that hasn't translated as much to a strike rate at the moment. Because eventually he will go out, right? I keep saying that. There's no sign of this. But I don't mean that in a bad way. But the way that I talked about it with the Sunrisers, where they were all in form and eventually that was going to collapse in and then it did for that next game. That's not saying they're duds or they're not going to win the championship or that, that Sun on their own isn't doing the right thing. But just the consistency is the one that is very hard to keep up. Be interesting to see what happens with his true strike rate when his average drops is what I would really be interested in. You can see just after the power play, he's been going out, but scoring, quicker than everyone else. That's exactly what his job should be, right? Scoring with a true strike rate, what's that? A third of a ball quicker than anyone else, right? So, if you think about what a third of a ball is, we're talking about what? 1.5 and over quicker than anyone else in that period. which means that a set opener is not costing you anything. And then with a long batting lineup, it's okay if he goes out in that area. But this is incredible because he's not a very fit player and he's not used to very long innings. And so sometimes you see with these kind of hitters that they, especially now he's done it so many times, that they can kind of slow down and tire out. I love the fact that, he's managed to score so quickly. The true average is probably, it's only from 54 balls, so we're not too worried about the true average. But we're worried a lot about the true strike rate of plus 90, right? Anyway. All right. This is Rinku's median entry point. So last year they were bringing him in around the 10th over, and you can see they've pushed that back a little bit today. Again, it's really important when we talk about this sort of stuff. At no stage do we think this is the reason they lost the game, because they had enough runs to be able to defend. And had they bowled better, and it's all well and good to say they don't have very good bowlers, but they bowled a lot of bad balls. I thought both teams in the power play bowled a lot of the wrong length. There was a lot of mistakes made. But it is worth noting that they have changed the way that they are using him. I just think Rinku's so good that it makes more sense to have him come in a little bit earlier, but there's obviously a plan there. And that's again today why he probably didn't come in. And today was a perfect situation for him to come in earlier. I almost would have brought him in when they lost the first wicket. Him or Ramandeep maybe first, and then brought Andre Russell in straight after that. Assuming there was going to be another wicket, which I suppose you couldn't. Sam Curran today went at 15s. And then you got Harshal at 16s and Rabada at 17s. So Rabada had gone for what, about 39 runs off 10 balls, I want to say, at one stage. What is interesting is that the spinners on both sides did quite well. So I thought Chahar bowled really, really smart today. There was that little period where I think he bowled 2 overs and Bra bowled an over, and they did well. But here's the reason I'm mentioning this is they waited forever to bring Bra on. And I know 10 runs and over doesn't look like a win, but I think we can all say that today it probably was a win. And you go back and it was the one thing that Kolkata got right with their bowlers was trying to get their spinners on as early as possible. And by the time they brought Harpreet on, it was a bit late. Now, I understand why, because they didn't want him to bowl to Sun on Narayan. But he is a good bowler to left-handers. And I still feel like they are getting so stuck in this map thing. His matchup suggests he should bowl to left-handers. Now, they would counter that with Sunil Narine is not the left-hander you want to bowl to and everything else. But they've ended up with 6 overs out of spin. And those 6 overs of spin have gone at about 9 runs per over, right? And their best seamer is Arshdeep, and he goes at 11 runs. I think sometimes it's even worth bringing a spinner on early just to see what the conditions are like. Because if your seamers are getting smashed around, you might be right. You might bring the spinner on and you might go for 25 runs. That has happened. But if you don't do it, you end up losing out on resources. And I think that's what they did today. And I've got no problem with them handling their fast bowlers. Their fast bowlers have taken a lot of wickets at times, even if they haven't always been all that economical. But yeah. Good to see Arshdeep in the wickets again as well. Anyway, that's us for the scoreboard. So we will take a quick break here on that part of the show, and then you can ask your questions. I can see there's already a few super chats in. Line them up if you would like some more, but even any comments out there are more than handy. But I am Jared Kimber, and this is the Scoreboard. This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts, and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now. All right, welcome back. We've got a couple of questions here, and we'll line them up. So San says, please talk about the fielding setup against Dre Ross. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was interesting. I think we've seen it before. It has to be backed up with bowling, but at a certain point, you know, I think bowling plans are much more important to Dre Russ than fielding plans, only because he hit so many sixes. So it worked today, but it worked because he wasn't really timing the ball all that well. So if you get him on a day when the bowlers are bowling well and he's not timing the ball particularly well, you can come up with fields that bother him and upset him. And we've seen it before. But the truth is that you can't do that consistently, and eventually he's just going to hit the ball for six anyway. So I think the bowling plans and the execution is the most important thing to Dre Russ. But it's also fair. I think certainly if he's not hitting sixes, then there are certain fields and certain patterns that you can bowl to him that can slow him down a little bit. Aditya says, could it be the bowlers are overthinking the chaos batter aspect of Narayan and moving away from traditional tactics too early? I think when you have someone like Narayan Narayan got good at batting largely through throwdowns, right? And you can see batters like that. You see heaps of them come out of the UK. And you can see it really, really early on. Zach Crawley is not a T20 player, but as another player, you can see he has got good through throwdowns. And that means that when you bowl in a consistent, normal area, they have the perfect shot for that because they've just played that thousands of times. So when you get a player like that, teams tend to go, okay, what else can we do? Narayan backs away, he loses his shape, and he swings himself off his feet. The most sensible ball is the wide one outside off stump, right? The problem is that it's a bit like bowling on the stumps to Steve Smith. It makes sense and you might eventually be successful, but how many boundaries will you get along the line? And so you think about from Narayan's point of view with a power play. He's probably aiming over long off and sometimes extra cover. So sort of wide long off to long off, right? And so if you put a long off back, it means that if he slices the ball, and let's say you put a long off back and a third back, because he's very likely to go there. He's then got between point and extra cover to be able to slice the ball. And so if you think to yourself, okay, so we'll put a long off out and an extra cover out, or even just a normal cover out. Now he has the ability to open the face and go over point and backward point and be able to do that. And also, if you get the ball too close to him, he can drag it over long on as well. So his ability to hit those boundaries kind of anywhere from the same ball makes it very, very tough to set a field to. But what's the better length? Because if you bowl a good length on off stump to him, Aditya, he can then hit you from cover to square leg. That's even further amount. And they're covering both sides of the wicket. So what teams are trying to do is they go, we know he's going to hit one straight up in the air, and we know he's going to slice one. So can we just play into that and hope that that the first one he hits gets caught? I do think, if you caught him, that would be quite handy as well. Why is this so small on my screen? Sarisha says, Jared, did you not wish for this? Kudos for you to trying to break down the game. I've long since given up on trying to comprehend this season. Did I wish for this? I don't know if I wished for this. If you go back a couple of years, and I can't remember when I started saying this, but people really didn't like it and were telling me I was wrong. I thought the bowlers were outperforming the batters in T20 cricket. And it's a hard thing to say because people were still scoring runs. But if you go back to that graph we showed you on before, the runs should have been going up each year, especially as T10 came in and the 100 came in, and all the things that from Lance Klusener onwards, strength training and all those sorts of things, understanding how the core helps, and the new techniques of hitting shots like Joss Butler and MS Dhoni, and the scoops and everything. The runs really weren't going up. I've been expecting this for a long time, and I actually think it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would. So I think from that perspective, I expected it. I'm not sure if I wish for it. I like a good 128 plays 127 as well. And the problem at the moment is that we've had a bunch of these games in a row and people start to go, we're never going to have low scoring games again. I don't think that's quite true. Maybe the low scoring games in future will be 140, 160 rather than, 120, 140, which is very, very fair. But I do think we are also going to see some collapses as well. And we might see some other kinds of games. But it does look like we finally entered that, basketball on grass, or, everyone hitting home runs in baseball, or, that kind of era where these things have, the batters have worked this out, and now it is up to the bowlers again. But remember, it wasn't that long ago that the bowlers were back on top. Were taking heaps of wickets with a new ball in T20 cricket. A lot of wickets taken in the ODI World Cup, and in Test cricket they were dominating. So we have to remember that just recently, bowlers were dominating again. No one will remember that now. It is important. And just the other thing that I want to mention, I don't think anyone's asked this question, but someone asked me this on Twitter. So I didn't get a chance to take the tweet, but they said, why don't teams just go in with 9 batters and 2 bowlers? The Kagisa Rabada went at 17 runs per over today. What do we honestly think part-time bowlers are going to go for? And people, it would be like having a football team and having every player on your field can kick a goal, but like 2 can defend it, right? I get your point. There's more goals being scored in football. We need to score more goals, but the other end still matters, right? And if you could score 7 goals, but your opposition can score 9, and we just saw a perfect example of this with Kolkata, right? So Kolkata do not have what coming into today. I just have to go back and remember their full bowling lineup. Where are we? I've now forgotten it, of course. So Chamira could be a frontline bowler. Harshit has periods of the game where he's a frontline bowler. Chakravarti has been struggling. Russell is not a frontline bowler. So who's the only bowler coming into today that they could trust, right? It is Sunil Narayan, and he ends up with the best figures. Now, if Mitchell Starc was in normal Mitchell Starc form, if Chakravarti was in normal Chakravarti form, things would be very, very different. But sometimes this is how it goes. So that's why you need bowlers in your side. Rupesh says, do you think the impact players rule should stay, or do you want it gone? I want proper substitutions. I don't want one substitution. We're going to do substitutions. Let's stop pissing about. Right? Let's have 15 players that can play in a game, 10 batters, 5 bowlers, the best 10 batters up against the best 5 bowlers. I think that's a fascinating thing. I want to see the best going up against the best. I don't necessarily want to see Ramandeep bowling. Unless, he has to, which on today, maybe he still would have. Sharma says, Johnny Bairstow back in form after Josh Bartlett. I did it against KKR. My selected players from England cricket team, T20. I didn't get the rest of his thing. But I did want to talk about this because it's quite interesting. So Cheyenne sent me a message today saying that it would make sense if Phil Salt opened the batting with Will Jacks and Butler went down the order. I think he's in number 3. I said if they're going to bat him down the order, probably about 5. That Clarkson type position, which Butler kind of not invented, but certainly perfected for a long period of time. And then Bairstow does this. It's interesting, right? It really does feel like, things are changing on a sort of game by game basis of who's going to be opening, of how some of these teams go. India is going to have the most questions at the end of this tournament because the form lines of some of these players who are probably not going to get in the squad are going to be obscene, right? They're going to have ridiculous numbers behind them. And I saw Sanjay Mandrake today didn't pick Virat Kohli and didn't pick Hardik Pandya, right? And you could make a very good argument why he's correct at that. But you could also make a very good argument that when you're facing Shaheen Afridi in the first over and he's swinging around corners, you need Virat Kohli. And Hardik Pandya is still, at his shell, a irreplaceable team player for that team. But, as I said, if you're looking at form, look at all the other guys that you have to choose from. And I think England are probably now in a similar position. Salt, Butler, Jacks, Bairstow. They can't all open. Sand says, Oh, we already talked about this. Um, no, I think I talked about it a little bit. You think Punjab didn't follow up with the plan against Naran? They got him to miss the wide swinging one sometimes, and then bowl to his body next ball. I would assume, Sam, they had probably two different plans. I'm just guessing, of course. Hopefully, it just wasn't horrendous bowling. But I think there are two different ideas to Narayan. You want to get him to hit the ball straight up in the air from outside off stump, which is fine. We've seen him do that plenty of times before. Losing his shape, reaching the ball, backing away, all those things. But the other shot you want him to do is to try and he kind of gets in his own way when he's trying to play off his body. So it might have been that. And sometimes it's just bad bowling. When guys are whacking it everywhere, you just panic. Amog says, how can the ICC make bowlers' life less miserable? Well, the ICC have absolutely nothing to do with this league, so they can't help the IPL. Maybe Dukes or SG white balls. I don't know if SG still make a good quality white ball. I'm not saying that it can't be used, but the Dukes have kind of given up on a top level white ball. Kookaburra just basically make the white balls for almost everywhere now. And it's not really worth it. Those are two small companies compared to Kookaburra, and Kookaburra is a small company. So Kookaburra's kind of got it. Amog, the bats were already restricted in size about 8 or 9 years ago. There's nothing you can do with the bats really anymore. They've restricted the size of the edges. It isn't the bats, mate. Right? It is... Bat makers have got a lot better at making the middle wider. The size of the bat isn't really changing that. They just worked out that technology. They've made the bats lighter so that batters can swing them further. But let's be honest, if you go back and you look at what Lance Klusener was doing, that is when this started. Right? Lance Klusener showed us what was possible at a stage when we didn't even understand what he was doing. And bit by bit, players are just learning that. And that what goes back to what I was saying from before, which is that bowlers are actually doing really well in T20 cricket, and now they've gone back. But bowlers just got a reinforced Kookaburra ball, and for 2 years they took a bunch of wickets up top. And now that has disappeared, so they've got to find another advantage. But this is part of the game, right? From 2000 to 2016 in Test cricket, you could argue that was the greatest era ever to be a batter. And from 2017 to 2021 or 22, probably 22, you could argue it was one of the worst eras to ever be a test batter. These things do come in waves, but we should see more runs being made in limited overs cricket over time. And it's not T20 that teaches us this, it's one-day cricket. Runs per over have been going up pretty steadily over the years. Not every year do they go up, but over the years in general, they get more and more, right? And we are going to see a very different kind of sport come on in the next little while. And there will be counter moves and there will be ways of stopping them. And there have been times before where people have said, oh, everyone's going to score at 10 runs and over forever now. And then it doesn't happen, right? All these things happen. All these things change. If you really want to know, I think almost the best option at the moment would be to have 5 specialist bowlers in each team. So have the bench system, as I said before. Sankelp says, how does form work? Is there a set way to get into it? So I explained this recently when it comes to like making scrambled eggs. But think about anything, Sankelp, that you do well, right? It might be making your bed. And for about 5 days in a row, you might make your bed absolutely perfectly. And then on the 6th day, it doesn't work. And on the 7th day, it's terrible. And on the 8th day, it's okay. Do you know how or why that has happened? Right? That is what form is. Form is a combination of confidence. Sometimes it can be you're looking, if you're a batter, it might be that you're looking in the right area all the time. And I know that sounds weird, but batters don't always look in the right area. Sometimes they react to the ball. And if you're reacting to the ball, you can get, you're not always as good. So there's little things like that. What else would it be when we're talking about form? It's micro things like you might be just as fit, but your knee might be moving correctly. So with a batter, if your knee is slightly bowed or you have an issue with your knee, your bat path can change. And so you might not feel all that much different with your knee, but your knee might change your butt path. It might change your butt path. It'll definitely change your butt path. It might change your bat path by a couple of millimeters. And that's the difference between you swinging through the line beautifully and getting that inside edge into short mid wicket. Confidence as well. I'm very good at doing this thing because I have been doing it very well. So the hot hand fallacy was something that came up through basketball, of course, which was there was no difference with someone who just made a three-pointer and someone who hadn't just made a three-pointer. And then when they went back and they looked at that research, it was like, actually, no, it proved what we always thought. If you've made a couple of three-pointers, you're probably slightly more likely to make the next one. So all of these things play a big part when it comes to that. So I think from when we look at it that way, I think it's a much better way of being able to understand what form is. But form is elusive, and if you knew how to get in it, Sankalp, you wouldn't be worrying about it for cricket, right? You'd be worrying about it for every single thing. Imagine if you could train surgeons or pilots about form. There are pilots fly every single day, and I've got friends who are pilots, and they would tell you there are some days they fly better than others. If they could find that magic bit, they would. It's exactly the same for every different part of life. I think it's for some reason in cricket, we think these things are different, but they really aren't all that different at all. Path says, is this what baseball feels like? No. You're not getting it. How many sixes were hit today? Shall we look? 20 odd? 30 odd? 40 odd? Almost 40 sixes? You ain't getting 40 home runs in a baseball game. So no, it is not what baseball feels like. And Rocky Guion says, today did KKR bowl badly? Or was it... Oh God, sorry. Got a kitten attacking my door. Did KKR bowl badly, or was it extraordinary batting from Punjab? Can't understand where KKR lost it. Concerns for them. I've had concerns for them all the way. This is, if you go back to all the power lists, all the KKR fans were really upset with me that I wouldn't have them higher. This is kind of why. I have no issues with their batting. I like their batting. I kind of don't think Narayan will be able to keep doing it, but I think there's a few other guys that haven't really stepped up yet who I do think can be really good. But my big issue is that on the other side of the ball, and I've been saying it since the start of the season, Stark has not been bowling well. And I don't see him about to come good. Chakravarti is the one I think could have come good, but and I think he had a good couple of games maybe before this, unless I'm misremembering one. But so much of the bowling has to be done by three people, and one of them is bowling fantastically, and it's completely working for him, right? But the other one they spend an absolute fortune on, and I can't see it coming good. And then you got Chakravarti, who. So I'm just having a look now. He had none for 26 against Chennai, 1 for 30 Eden Gardens, 2 for 36, 1 for 36, and then none for 46 today, which isn't bad, considering everything today. But if he's your second best bowler, he's going to have to do more than that. And I loved coming into the season, I loved the idea of every time Kolkata had put those two guys together, Narayan and Chakravarti, they can control the game. Narayan is controlling his bit, but Chakravarti isn't. And the problem with that is, you saw today, they blocked out an over from Narayan. Now look at the rest of the bowlers. We know that Harshit can occasionally take wickets, but he's obviously a very flawed bowler, right? Not too worried about Chamira. It's one game in. Chamira at his best is fantastic, but he can go for runs. But there isn't that consistency of bowlers that they have available to them to be able to pick. Now, this comes back to the Sunrisers point. If your batting is good enough to score 20% over par, then your bowling can be 19% worse than par. Ask yourself at the moment where Kolkata is on that line. I would say their batting is good enough to be, 16% better than par? But is their bowling 12 or 13% worse than par? And par's pretty bad this year. But it's probably still worse, right? So the point then being is, if they can keep that slight plus, and they're still going to win a few games with the bat. If they start to fail with the bat, then they're in even more trouble, right? Did they bowl bad? I thought they bowled very bad in patches. Sorry, I wanted to get rid of that one. I thought they bowled very bad in patches. I didn't think they bowled bad all the way through, but I did think there were key moments where I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And a lot of the power play bowling, I wasn't quite sure about that. I don't think they ever bowled as well as Punjab did today. And that's kind of where we're coming back to what I was talking about before, is I thought Punjab bowled better, looking at what they did than Kolkata did. And that's a huge issue for Kolkata going forward, because Punjab should be a better bowling team than them, but Kolkata should be able to outbat them by a significant enough distance. But me and Bayram talk about this all the time. If you have a team that's too one-sided, you put a lot of pressure on that one unit to be great all the way through. And think about what has happened in the last couple of games. The Sunrisers and KKR have both lost, right? And it was for two different reasons. The Sunrisers' great form with the bat finally stopped and they lost the game. Fine. Okay. KKR didn't fail with the bat, but their bowlers still couldn't hold it up. Those two teams now have a lot of questions, and that is why I haven't been all my chips all the way in. The only reason that I had them ahead of Chennai is because Chennai hadn't been playing very good cricket. And you look at it at the moment, and you look at the points table, and obviously we've got, 4 games in the next 2 days. So by the time the power list comes out, who the hell knows? But you look at the teams at the moment. I think you certainly can have questions about KKR. You can certainly have questions about Sunrisers, Lucknow, and CSK. Again, neither of them look fully functioning. And the other team that was close to all of them was Gujarat, and they obviously wet the bed the other day as well. So the good news for KKR is, outside of Rajasthan, everyone has questions, right? And that's okay. They might still get a second spot, especially if Rajasthan keep winning. Second spot is there for the taking. It makes it almost easier at that point. They've got a fantastic net run rate still, and everything from that point of view. But that's it for the scoreboard today. Thank you very much to everyone for coming over. I don't think I got any more last minute super chats. Thank you to everyone for the super chats and for the normal chats and for the chats. We did a really interesting video on the business of the IPL up on the main channel. If you haven't seen the Raidu piece or the Sai Sudarshan pieces as well, they're definitely worth going back and having a look at. We'll have the power list on Monday, and we've got some stuff on the Indian team because it's such a fascinating IPL season heading into the World Cup, specifically for India. Although I think we might even do another one later on because of the questions that Fraser McGurk and now Johnny Bairstow and Will Jacks are asking of their teams as well. So I think there's so many conversations to be had coming up. But huge thanks to everyone for coming up on the channel. We did a great Red Inca podcast, which isn't up on the YouTube on this page yet, but it will be. But is on the podcast feed, which is all about the ghost leagues of Paris. Of France. Why did I say Paris? Of France, where they have where there's a whole fake league going on for the strangest reason ever. Trust me, it is worth your time to go in and have a look at that. We did a video on the main channel, but I got the reporter and one of the players, well, not one of the players, Alex couldn't play in it because they were fake teams, but one of the women's players from the French national team to come in and talk to us about it. It's a really, really cool little podcast. And that's it for now. And we will be back again very soon. I'm Jared Kimber. This is The Scoreboard. And like, subscribe, do all those things. I'll be back tomorrow night. I'll be back Sunday night. And, Cricket 8 watch-alongs. The great Rob Barron. We've got Mark Mercado coming in. And we have Munners from Dealt with Cricket on Sunday as well. So, come. Make money or lose your money and then attack Rob Barron on Twitter, which is even more fun. There is no point having talent around you if you don't use it correctly. Every captain knows this, and it is the same of the sport of cricket as when you are trying to win Raid Shadow Legends, which sounds like a new cricket league if we're being honest. The difference is that instead of taking down arrogant openers or massive power hitters, you are fighting the Demon Lord and the Hydra. So if you want to use your leadership smarts from cricket in a new way, sign up to Raid Shadow Legends and participate in their Spring Hunt event where you can win some real life prizes such as gaming consoles, Amazon gift cards with a total value of $10,000 and a lot of other in-game prizes like legendary champions and more. all you've got to do is get Raid using the link in my description, enter in your Raid ID, and join the competition at springhunt.polarium.com. But the heart of any game is its players, which is, again, a little bit like cricket. So Raid is launching its first ever community weeks. It is a super fun 14-day program giving away cool stuff as super hot legendary champion name Chronica Adelian. In case you don't know, she's the one who puts her enemies to sleep. To get her, all you've got to do is log in for 7 days between now and July the 8th. And the gifts, they don't end there. Use the link in my description or scan my QR code here on the screen and you will get a huge starter pack with an epic champion, Tyrell, and another starter pack after getting to level 25 that includes the epic Rector Druff. I like that name. Rector Druff should be a cricketer, right? And I'm already keeping stats on both of them in case I need to beat you, because you can actually play against me by finding my handle, The Good Jord. And after installing Raid via my link, make sure to use the promo code SPRINGHUNT24 to get silver and more. Who doesn't want silver? So click the link in the description and become the captain of your Raid Shadow League today. And let's take down those demon lords in